Yo, what's going on YouTube? Welcome back to another GTA Online video. So I'm going to take a look at crew emblems today, or more specifically, how to import a custom image as your crew emblem. Now up until now, if you wanted to create an emblem, you go online, you go to the social club, you go to the emblem editor, and you basically use their array of primitive shapes to piece them together to make a cool looking design. Now while there are a lot of possibilities with that, Forza Motorsport is living proof that a primitive shape editor has a lot of capabilities. However, there are sometimes, occasions where you can't quite create what you want. So, by doing this, you can basically import whatever you want as your crew emblem. So let's take a look. So just before we get started, there's a couple of programs you're going to need to make sure that you can do this. So firstly, you're going to need a basic text editor. So for the purposes of this, Notepad will work fine, but you can use something like Notepad++, Dreamweaver, whatever you want. But for the purpose of this, I am just using Notepad. Then you will need a browser that can live edit HTML. Now that means something like Google Chrome, Firefox, or if you're on a Mac, then Safari. But for the purposes of this, I'm going to use Chrome. And then finally, you're going to need some sort of way to output SVG image files. Now I'm going to use Illustrator because it can save SVGs, but you can go online and use something like VectorMagick, or I believe there's a free program called Inkscape. They will also output them. There are various online solutions, but for the purposes of this, I'm going to use Illustrator. Then obviously you're going to need the image that you want to convert, and you'll need an account on the Rockstar Social Club and obviously a crew to go with it. But primarily Notepad, Chrome and Illustrator are what I'm going to be using in this tutorial. So let's get started. First up, you're going to want to open a new Notepad document, and you're going to want to paste the following code into the top. Now this code I will put in the description down below, but it's basically a wrapper for your SVG image file. Don't worry about the specifics. It's got height, version, dimensions, all that kind of stuff, but to be honest, just copy and paste it in. This is just necessary to wrap your image. Next up, you're going to need your SVG image file. Now for this, I'm going to create it using Illustrator. So if I want to jump into here, now what you want to bear in mind when you open it up, I'm going to use, for the purpose of this, I'm going to use my logo. Now you can't just import a PNG, or you can't import like a JPEG. It has to be a vector file, which is the SVG. And similarly, you also have to make sure your image is converted. It's not as simple as me taking this image, exporting it as an SVG, and then uploading it, because it won't show up. So you need to trace it and make sure it's actually a vector. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to copy it, and you need to make sure that your canvas size is 512 by 512 pixels. That's the only thing you need to worry about, but make sure it is that size. Now once you've done that, you can paste it in, and obviously you can see this is a bit nasty because it's got jagged edges. So I'm going to click this, and I'm going to trace it. So you go down here, to Object, Live Trace, Tracing Options. Now you can preview it. Now obviously if you want to spend a bit more time, you can go through and fiddle around with the settings. I know the edges are a little bit wobbly, but for the purposes of this, I'm just going to leave it like that. So you trace it, and then what you want to do is you want to expand it, so that way the selection is around just your logo. So I'm going to go Live Trace, Expand, and now you can see that it's all done because there's selection lines around the outside. The other indicator is the fact that if you look over at the color palette, you can see that I can now change the color to whatever I want, whereas before it had a question mark because it selected more than just the logo. So now that that's like that, what you want to do is you go File, Save As, and you use the drop down and you select SVG. You can title it whatever you want, so call it Tutorial, go Save, and you want to look at these settings. Now for the most part you can leave it as it is, but for type, drop down, use SVG. You can leave that as it is. You want to leave this embedded. Again, you can leave all of this here. Make sure you've got optimize ticked, output fewer T-span elements, and use text path. So make sure those are ticked, and then you can go OK. So now you have your SVG image file. So what you then want to do is open that up. So I'm going to open it up using Dreamweaver, just because it makes my life easier, but you can actually open it up in Notepad. Where's it gone? Tutorial. So once you've opened it up, you will then be greeted with this. Now this looks a bit daunting, but what you are interested in is primarily this entire chunk down here. So if you look at the top here, you will see that it begins with this open bracket and then path. Now this is where you want to start. You don't want to copy the whole thing. You don't want to copy the part with G in it. You want to copy from here. Now depending on the text editor you use, sometimes this will be output in a different way. Sometimes that will say image instead. In fact, I can probably show you an example of that. If I pull this up and go, I believe my original one, yes, it came out looking like this. Now this is what actually happened when I didn't convert the JPEG to a vector. It actually came out with a load of letters instead of coordinates, and this didn't show up in the Rockstar Social Club. So you probably want to steer clear of it if it does that, but sometimes some of the image editors will start with open brackets image. So that does still work. You know, you can still use that as your indicator, but the point is this is where you want to start from. So let's jump back here. You start at the path section, and you want to copy right down to the bottom to the end of there. You want to again ignore the G's and ignore the last SVG line. So basically from here down to here. So you copy that, and then you bring back up your Notepad document, and you see where this handy gap is. You now paste that back in there, and this is your complete image file, or your image kind of code. So you select everything, so that's, you know, right from the bottom right to the top. This now includes the SVG stuff, and copy that so it's now in your clipboard. And now you're going to head over to the Rockstar Social Club. Now you go to your crews. Now for the purposes of this, I'm going to use this one. I've actually already got the logo in there, so I'm going to change it so you can see that first, and then I will jump straight back onto it. So I'm going to start a new one. Now you can see down below there's a variety of different sort of tests that I've done, but for the purpose of this I'm going to get a new one. So there's a new canvas here. Now what you want to do, make sure you're in Chrome, is right click on here and go inspect element. Now you have all this kind of code below. Now run a control F or a control find and type the word SVG. You'll see that it comes up here. It will highlight it in yellow, and then what you want to do is right click on it and go edit as HTML. Now you see that it basically opens up the box below, and this allows you to edit whatever is in this box. So we're going to select all of this, and we are going to replace it with what's already in our clipboard, which is the code for our image. So that goes in there, and as soon as you click off, you'll see that it immediately shows up with what we selected. So from here, all you need to do is you go save. It'll say, do you want to save this? Commit your changes. You go OK. And you can see now that I've got a second one that's appeared down below. And then all you want to make sure you do, this is important because obviously if you don't do this, you won't be able to see it in your selection, is publish it. So we'll go publish. You know, you can select down and choose the clan that you're part of, the crew you're part of. So publish it to that crew. And then, in fact, just to sort of show you as well, I'll publish the other one just so that we can kind of, you can see there is some variety. So once you've published it, you then go back to your crews. You go down to manage, and you go to the box here, and you can basically select all the different ones that you've got. So you can see I've got two of the logo that I've got there, but for the purpose of this, if I select a different one, you can see that it does actually change. But yes, I can go back to my logo, and then once you've done that, you scroll down to the bottom, go save this crew, and then it's done. Now occasionally once you save it, it will take a little bit of time to update. It does normally do it quite quickly, but you know, I found that I had to refresh the page a couple of times. But then yeah, once you go back to your crews, you can now see that you have your emblem. And that is how you put a custom image into your emblem slot in GTA Online. Now bear in mind that, as I said, there are a few things you want to work out. There are some programs that will sometimes give you some troubles. I've heard people having trouble with Inkscape because when you are getting the image code, it wraps it with a few other unnecessary lines, and that causes a few problems when you're trying to import it. Similarly, I actually had a few problems when I was trying to use Illustrator CS6, so I've actually gone back to using CS5. Don't know why, to be honest, but I just know that when I imported the files, it kind of, the image came out in the wrong way. But yeah, if you can find it and you can get your code in the correct way, then as long as you follow those few simple steps, then yeah, you can definitely get it to show up, and then you can have a custom cool logo. So hopefully you found that helpful. As always, don't forget to like and share this video. It does really help me out, and obviously don't forget to subscribe. Also, don't forget to check out the Facebook page and the Twitter page for all your updates throughout the week. And thanks for watching. Take it easy. Catch you next time. Peace out.